I'm Becky Meagher, and welcome to Transitions, Body, Mind, Spirit. Transitions, we have so many different transitions in our life, from when we're a little kid and we think we're going to be one thing, and then we grow up and do something totally different. And I like to use the metaphor of triathlons. And in a triathlon, the first thing you do is you swim. Then you get to the transition area, and then you get on your bicycle and you bike. And then you get to your transition area, and then you run. And we all have different transitions. We start at one thing, go to another. And I have an amazing guest today, David Wilson. He is a drum circle coordinator, a mental health counselor, a musician, and it goes on, and we're going to hear him play some of his, he can play anything, but we have drums tonight. So, David, welcome. I'm glad you're here.
This is exciting. I'm really glad to be here.
Yay!
Yeah.
So we have drums here today, but I really want, and I know currently you are working as a master's degree therapist with people that would do like 28 days to help them with their various addictions.
Addictions or things related to depression, anxiety. Oftentimes we do things focusing on past trauma and how to work through some of that stuff. So all of those things tend to be, and not everybody comes to that where I work with necessarily addictions, but sometimes they do, oftentimes they do, and sometimes it's alcohol, drugs, sometimes it's gambling, sometimes it has to do with screen time, and things like that. Yeah.
Intimacy,
yes.
Sex.
Yes.
All the things that take control of you rather than you having control over
right.
them.
Things that we use to try to regulate ourselves that are not necessarily healthy. Yeah.
Right, right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I want to go back to your beginnings, and as a child, you have your parents were 17 when they had your brother, but there was this wide gap. I think you're how many? 15 years difference between you and your brother?
16 and a half. Yeah.
Wow, that's like a generation.
So there's basically as many years between me and my brother as there is between my brother and my parents. So technically he could be my dad, right? And my parents could be my grandparents. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
But they had the gumption to start this family and also complete college.
Right, exactly.
And your dad became a minister?
That's right, Lutheran, ELCA, Lutheran minister, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you grew, and you have a sister also?
Yes, she's my Kathy. Mm-hmm. Yeah, she's 4 years older than me, yes.
Okay, so you have this family unit, and somehow or other, as a kid, you were drawn to music?
Oh yeah, well, it was everywhere in our house. So we had two pianos. Everybody sang. My dad was in a barbershop chorus and quartet. They competed. My brother majored in college in music, and he became a music teacher. Me and my sister, we both, we sang in the choir. We played in the band, acted in the musicals. She was in The Sound of Music when she was the youngest daughter of the group.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember when they performed that. The high school performed it, and I was like 5, and I got upset during the performance because I thought that at the part where they carry her up the stairs to take her to bed, it looked surreal, and I was like, no, I screamed. I was like, that's my sister, and cried.
Oh, God.
Yeah, I forgot to tell you about that, but that was a part of my history that I'll never forget. Yeah. I remember that. I was 5 years old. So.
Wow, that's a little trauma there.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. Yeah.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
So you grew up in this family, and music was a big part, and you could act and you could play. You were in the chorus, and you played instruments.
Yes.
Which was?
Well, we all took piano lessons, and I was probably the least good at it with the piano, which is probably why when at the church in early 70s they put on, my brother helped, he brought it to the church because he was, like I said, he was a music major, and they did Jesus Christ Superstar.
Oh.
In the sanctuary. And the guy who was from our congregation that played the drum set, his name was Eddie. I was when he started playing, I was like, oh my God. And I was like, that's what I want to do, you know? So, but I mean, I was already tinkering around as drummers do, you know, with the pots and pans in the kitchen, pulling them out and tinkering with them. But yeah, I always loved the drums, and that's my niche. So yeah.
Okay. And
Yeah.
did you play drums in a rock and roll band in high school?
Oh yeah, yeah. I was in jazz band. We had our own rock band, not through the school, but you know, just us kids.
Right.
You know, and I started that in middle school, and it was in throughout high school, and it was in college as well.
Okay. And this was what part of the country were you in high school?
Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania.
Central Pennsylvania, kind of near Hershey and Harrisburg.
Okay.
Lebanon was the county I'm from, and I was around an area where there's a lot of Pennsylvania Dutch people, Amish and Mennonites. No, it's not just Amish and Mennonites. There's plenty of people that are not that, but they were around us, and it was part of my life growing up. So yeah.
Okay. So there you are in college, and deciding you'd get a degree in music?
In music therapy, yes.
Music therapy.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't know what I was getting into. I just thought it was different. It was similar to what my brother did, and my sister got a degree in psychology, you know, and so I'm kind of like, well, maybe if I do, maybe I can combine these somehow. Might be kind of cool, you know. So I just heard about it and saw that the school that my mom wanted me to apply for, that they had that. So Mansfield University, way up there at the top of the state. It's literally in the middle of nowhere, where the deer population is 3 times this of people. People go up there to go hunting, obviously. So,
wow.
Yeah.
So there you are in this really nice college, and,
Yes.
and you're learning music therapy. And you graduate, and gee, you need a job, right?
Yeah. That was the point, I guess, right?
Right.
Yeah. And I did my internship before I graduated at a state hospital, and it was in Allentown, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
So yeah,
Tell us
so that was
about that.
interesting. Well, it was just interesting because it was 6 months long, and I you know, I don't know if anything about state hospitals. There's not many of them around anymore because they kind of shut a bunch down back in the 80s with a program of a focus called deinstitutionalization.
Right.
You know,
where a lot of our homeless are today.
Exactly. Unfortunately, that led to a burst in the homeless population. But anyway, so yeah, I mean, I was just up in Allentown with my 2 sons recently, and they demolished all of the buildings that used to be the state hospital.
Wow.
But the campus is still there. It kind of looks like a little ghost town. It's kind of eerie, but it was eerie then, you know, because so patients were pretty much sent there, and not many of them ever left, you know, especially way back in the earlier days, early 1900s, you know, that's where family members would send people that they just didn't want to take care of anymore. So I met some of those people that literally spent their entire lives living at the state hospital.
In an institution.
Yeah.
So there you are, 6 months, like an internship,
Right.
and you're seeing, wow, these are mentally ill people. These
Right.
are the real deal.
Right. Some of them severe and you know, are not functional. Others probably could have had a fairly normal life, you know, had they been given a chance. You know, but back then people just didn't mess with it. So yeah.
So then, and tell us what the music therapy is.
So music therapy, the way I define it, and I try not to just go by a textbook definition, but it's kind of like if you got a client on one hand, patient, a person, you know, who has something that they need to work on. Maybe it has to do with some mental health issues. Maybe it has to do with addiction issues. Maybe it has to do with physical issues. Maybe they have to do physical therapy. You know. And then there's this music therapist over here, and they're coming into work with this person or group of people to try to use music to help them achieve whatever their goals are while they're receiving services. And the music itself is kind of like a liaison between the therapist and the client or patient, and it's almost like instead of it being just like talk therapy, you got the music in there to help facilitate expressiveness, or like I said, I mean, let's say one has physical therapy and they could use the drum to exercise a hand in a way that they need to work on. So but I've incorporated music into sessions where the song is helping them bring things up that they need to talk about or deal with. Or we would write a song and change the lyrics, take a popular song that they may not know, and let's replace those lyrics with lyrics that fit your situation that you need to explore and process. So did that answer your question?
I think so.
Okay.
So back to you did an internship, and then you get your degree, and you're out there doing what?
I was working at a psych center in Tampa, in Florida.
Okay.
Yeah, and that was back in 1990 is when I started that. Yeah.
It's University of South Florida?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. And so you're there, you're helping people heal using your music therapy, and your modalities are drums plus instruments?
Guitar a lot, because a lot of times I had to do with, I was bringing music into the group, and we were singing, playing, writing a song, taking pieces of we used to do an exercise where I would just take song titles and I would have them write a poem by pulling different song titles together and matching them up and create a poem to help them express what's going on with them. So even though we weren't actually singing or hearing music, we were using song titles, which is music, incorporating that into writing poetry. So yeah. So a lot of times my groups were music, art, poetry, sometimes movement or dance, all of those things.
Were you showing them to do movement too?
Oh yeah.
Oh.
I mean, that wasn't my primary thing, but sometimes in the process of music therapy, well, people, you're going to hear music, they want to move to it, and I think that's just kind of a natural thing to go to, and sometimes, in the session,
And so the mental health portion, and how long were you there at University of South Florida?
Yeah, I wasn't there that long because, well, the money started running out for that facility, and they ended up, I think they kind of closed for a while, and then they reopened again. But I stayed in Florida, and then eventually took a job. After I got my master's degree in mental health counseling, I took a job working for a family preservation program in Fort Myers, Florida.
And explain what family preservation is.
Well, it was a really awesome program that I worked for because there was people there that I learned from, that I really looked up to in the field of therapy. And I learned a lot about what family systems therapy is all about. And it's like you're focusing on the family system and not just the individual.
The mom, the dad, the
kids, but the whole network is kind of like you see it as one, and not just as individual people with, because sometimes you're working with individual issues, but in family therapy you're really trying to help the people in the family system by working with the system as a whole, and
does that mean everybody in the family gets therapy?
Yeah, well,
not just the addict?
I had to push really hard because we would go to the house, and they were required to attend the sessions. The family members were, because usually they had some kind of problems going on where the children were either at risk of being removed or were already removed, and we're trying to get them back home again. And the whole focus of that program was based upon something called permanency, where it's like and studies have shown that when children don't have a sense of who they are, even though they may have a nice place to live, if they don't have a connection, a family, a tribe, that has a psychological long-term impact on their well-being. Okay. So that was the whole focus of the programs, to give these kids a sense of permanency.
How do you give them a sense of permanency?
Well, they stay. They stay with their family, or they get adopted by another family, and that was like the last resort, but the goal was always first to try to get them reunited with their family, because even in the most unperfect families, as long as they're functioning well enough, the kids can stay. The kids are going to be doing better than if they were shipped off to some other family that, they're not really that connected to.
Even if, let's say, the dad drinks so much he becomes violent and.
Well, that's it. Some of the families that I did work with, we did have issues around drinking and drugging, and yeah, I had to work with them, and I had them do substance abuse treatment, but I worked with the family to help all around that, because yeah, they had to get on the track of sobriety in order to keep their kids, and sometimes they couldn't do it. And unfortunately, in the situations, we had to say, I had to go to in court, I had to recommend termination of rights, and I hated that. But we would stay in that intervention usually 6 months, sometimes longer, to work intensively with the family. And I usually had a caseload of about 5 families. And so I worked very, very intensely with my families to try to help them work through these things, so the kids could be with them.
Wow.
So yeah.
I would think that'd be mentally taxing for you.
Oh, it was. It was.
That's a lot of work.
Yeah. Well, it was also interesting because a lot of these families, they had problems with neglect, and so the home life was not always very pleasant. In Florida in the summertime, no air conditioning, and being in that environment. But see, it gave me an opportunity to be in the environment and be like, this is what's going on. This is what everybody is living in. This is the experience where everybody's happening. So it wasn't just like like going to like a nice clean office and
yeah, you're down in it, seeing
exactly,
what is going
exactly,
on.
and that made the therapy more real, in my opinion. So,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So how long did you do that?
I did that for about 4 years.
Okay.
Yeah, and then I moved and kept going on with doing family systems therapy, and then I was kind of doing them with kids that were in juvenile detention, or not juvenile detention, I'm sorry, but they were in trouble with the law. They were breaking the law, and the kids now were the so-called identified clients or patients that we were working with. But still, again, it was about working with the whole entire family system. So
Okay, and would you actually visit the homes
yeah,
there?
same thing.
Okay,
Yeah.
and you can see how valuable that is to actually see
Yeah.
where they're living.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I spent a lot of times in the projects. Yeah.
Was that, and how did you get to Nashville then?
Well, that's a long story. We don't have time for all of that, folks. Well, I moved to Tennessee in 2014, along with my wife at the time and our family.
You
Her
have two
family was
sons.
already here
Okay.
in Tennessee, even
That
though
kinda brought
they're not
you-
from here. But that's a long story. But we moved here under the direction of relatives, and I wasn't even working as a therapist at that time. I broke away from that field because I had some things I realized I had to work. I mean, I don't mind disclosing it if you don't mind me saying that
Yes.
I had to recognize I had some issues that I needed to work on related to.
You needed your own recovery.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. So I started going to AA, and I wasn't even supposed to say that because we're not supposed to say that. But anyway.
Oh, well.
Anyway, so I apologize. Not to you, but to the program. But anyway, so I'll just forget I even said that and just say that I started working a 12-step program.
Got it.
Okay. And by the way, this coming Friday, I'll be celebrating 20 years sobriety.
20 years.
Yeah,
That's fantastic.
in a week. So yeah.
Wow. So basically, you got to Nashville. You were married at the time. You had 2 kids.
Yeah.
All right. And you weren't working as a therapist.
Right. I wasn't working in mental health at all.
And you bought a store,
A little
right?
music store, yes.
How
yes.
cool.
In Hendersonville. Wilson's Music Store. It was Argyle's before I took it over. But yeah, that was really interesting because, I was selling instruments, but I was also working on instruments. I learned the trade of doing some minor repairs and setups, as they call it, on guitars and violins and mandolins and ukuleles.
Wow.
And I spent a lot of time in the back of the store because this is just a little building. But what started happening is people would come in with their instruments, and usually there was a story associated with their instrument that sometimes was really deep and powerful. And they would get to talking with me because oftentimes I was the only person in there. and sometimes it got heavy, and I found myself
Doing counseling in spite of
right,
yourself.
right, and then even including the music beats to it, because we would play oftentimes while they were in there, and I
Right.
would do jams every month, and so there was music therapy going on in that building too. So it was a combination of everything I'd
Wow.
been doing in the past, but I call it was my free private practice. So yeah,
That's great.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
then what ended up happening is that COVID hit and business was really down.
Yeah, for that, and because it was just a lot of people were shopping at the big box stores and
Right.
online, and that
So
didn't need
it
the
was
mom and pop stuff.
Time to
Yeah.
give that up.
Right, right.
And then you went back
I went back to being a therapist. Right.
Okay, and that's
Working
where you are
specifically in
today.
substance abuse, and now I'm working more in kind of like a combination of substance abuse, but also trauma
Mm-hmm.
and mental health. Yeah.
And we have some really cool instruments here that, and you use drums for therapy
Sometimes, yes.
sometimes.
Yeah.
And you're going to teach me.
Oh, yes, that's right.
Because I don't know how to drum, and
Perfect.
I'm a little out of my bailiwick, and that's the whole
Right,
idea. Do
right.
something outside your comfort zone, right?
Yes, because usually when we're trying to get ourselves to change, we got something we need to take a look at, and we're like, I'm not really comfortable with change. People don't usually like change. There's a funny saying: there's two things I don't like: the way things are and change. You know, so. And I didn't make that up, but I can resonate with it. But you know, people need to learn to practice if they're going to try to change things like giving up unhealthy habits.
Mm-hmm.
They also need like where I work.
Which is a professional
right.
therapy place,
Right,
where
right.
people will go for 28 days
Right.
and
Right.
Live there and
Right.
deal with their addictions or
Right.
issues.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Yeah.
That-
Exactly. Thank you.
Yeah.
So there's lots of things that we do there, not just me, but other people bring to the table that have to do with, I would say, somatic types of therapy, kind of like movement therapy. It has to do with the body.
Andrew Critchell's,
Yes.
who I did a
Good-
TV show on a couple weeks ago.
Good friend of mine. Yes.
Yes, he does the movement.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. He's one of the number of people that I know that incorporate different things that have to do with the body. Because we've learned over the years that trauma is stored in the body, you know, and so we try to help ourselves pay less attention to just what's going on up in here, because we kind of get stuck up there with our thoughts and our stories that we tell ourselves, but to pay attention to more what's going on from the neck down, and
Right.
and that's what a lot of the so-called experiential therapies are all about. So yeah.
So can you do a little demonstration and teach me how you do this?
Sure, sure.
Okay.
Well, these are skin drums. You know, djembes are right here, and they're technically, you know, either made in Africa or they're imitating an African drum called a djembe. If you go to a drum circle, wherever that may be, most of the people that come to that bring these type of drums. They're not the only kind of drums that show up there, but like probably I'd say at least 60-70% of the drums at a drum circle are these type of drums.
Okay.
So this one's so interesting. I won't go into the design of this, but I know there's some symbolism in that artwork.
The design at the bottom of that?
So the skins are usually either cowhide or goat,
Okay.
and they have a pretty cool sound. Yeah. So that's that drum. This one called a doumbek, and it is a Middle Eastern drum. This one's made out of ceramic. They're not always that way, but like, you know, kind of like a Middle Eastern belly dancing. djembe. And this is just another djembe. A friend of mine who's local, he made this for me, and it needs tightened. The head's kind of loose, but yeah.
So show me if I was in one of your groups
Okay.
and I wanted to get out of my comfort zone, and I'm going to.
Well, most people don't want to get out of their comfort zone, but that's the thing. But I help them understand how that's important to do that. You
And
know?
you're healing for whatever
Right.
is.
Here's an interesting thing that I learned
And we have 2 minutes
from
to
Carmen, my good friend and colleague and mentor. People that when we everywhere we go, we're seeking out 2 things mainly, unconsciously, okay, which is safety and connection. Okay?
Safety and connection.
Yeah, like that's kind of like always at the forefront of what's going on with us.
Okay.
You know? And we don't even realize it, but you know it when it's not happening. You know it when you're not feeling safety and when you're not feeling connection, right? So we teach our clients to help them understand that's what your brain is doing. We use something called the polyvagal theory to help them look at how their brain is responding differently, fight or flight, for example, you know, depending upon what they're experiencing.
We have a minute and a half to show. You need to show me how to hit these things.
Got to get going. I'm sorry. Well, I need to talk about that because when I put this drum in front of you, you
Yes.
may have felt like a fight or flight or fight situation or run away and like I don't want to do this. But so anyway, so all right, so let's just get started with it. So okay,
Yes.
if your hand is flat, okay, and kind of keep it loose, okay, and if you hit right in the center of the drum, right.
Don't-
No, you don't have to do it flat. You can just kind of, there you go. Now on the outside, use just the ends of your fingers. That's it. Okay, now let's do this together, all right?
Okay.
Do the middle. Do that. Now, I'm going to play something and you imitate it. We're doing a drum circle
Oh,
or
all right.
drum duet. Good.
It's pretty.
How does that feel?
It feels good.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Were you in the moment?
Totally.
Were you thinking about anything else other than that?
I was just
Exactly.
thinking about that.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, perfect.
All right. Well, this has been a
Are we
very
done?
short, very wonderful lesson.
Act 2?
And maybe we'll have to come back for more. But David Wilson, thank you for being on the show.
Well, it's been an honor.
Yes.
Thank you so much for inviting
and
me here.
what fun.
Yeah.
Transitions, body, mind, spirit. There you go. Yeah, I could. Makes me want to keep doing it.
Yeah.
And I'm still.